So today we're looking at kinship. Who was able to do the Brazilian reading? Kate, Eva, the table, anyone? Are you able to do the Brazilian reading?
Yeah, I read it. It was interesting.
Okay, Eva ready too. The table. The table, were you able to do the Brazilian reading? Welcome, Kultum. Welcome, Amy Katui. So, Kate, Eva, what were your takeaways from that reading? What surprised you? What was new?
Mm, I think for me, there were more questions that arose rather than like takeaways themselves because the people, the Brazilian people, they were sort of creating these Afro like styles and hair, stylings and such. Um, but at the same time, like they didn't. It was hard for me to see how they really were connected to the people that they were in between brackets, like imitating. So like for me, it was like, is this a dangerous practice, like especially because now these processes that were done before, they're like intertwining like technology, like chemicals and such for doing their hair, like what does that mean for the people who are doing these hairstyles in the first place. So that was kind of one thing that stayed with me after I read the text. uh, yeah.
Okay. So, Kultum, Amy, we're discussing the Brazilian text, transnational kinship, the Brazilian text. Eva, how did you feel reading text and the practices of these Brazilians feeling African? If you're responding, Eva, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I had an issue with my mic. Yeah, I was saying that I also had the same question that came up that Kate just mentioned of how much what did all these symbols or styles, aesthetics meant to the people, other than I guess I understood the creation of that identity to oppose the racism that's around them. But then I also was wondering, is that enough to be called kind of one as part of Africa, if that makes any sense what I'm saying. Um, Also, I thought it was very interesting in the last paragraphs where she was talking about how it can be dangerous to sort of in trying to create an identity, but it's kind of at the same time um, creating even more kind of an exotic Africa, and how much that could also be and kind of feel like an obligation on people who don't necessarily feel like that's part of who they are. So I thought that discussion was very interesting of the creation of Blackness, and in doing so, you're also limiting what being Black is. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting.
Okay. Kutum, Amy contribution, the Brazil piece.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So most of the feeling is more of like pity for the blacks in Brazil at that time. To able to go through such racial profiling and for them to be called saying they called like they have Katinga, that body odor. The fact that they also still try to even change and please to not appear like dirty people, like the fact that they're listening to them and it hurts them from the gazes is what really, really annoyed me. And most of the time when I thought they should feel like the anger. So like they have to prove that they are not this thing, but they are also like suffering from those kind of things. And it was very, very like I felt pity for them.
Okay. Amy? Amy, can you hear me? What's your take from the Brazil reading?
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. I think with me, I found it very surprising as to some of the things that they had described the Black people. I know that there's the Eurocentric views on beauty, but I questioned where the factor of smell and all these other things came in and what kind of gave them kind of the right to say like, oh, this majority of people smell and that's not and that's what makes them ugly, like that, in addition to other things. And to see how much, like Kutum said, how much racial profiling that they went through, and them also being majority of Black population, and also seeing how colorism played a factor on how they would try and bring in factors in Eurocentric beauty to try and make Black people more appealing to them in terms of like hairstyle. And I just like it surprised me during the text, and also some of the quotes that the Black people said and how they needed to change, how they needed to appear tidy because they would also already be racially profiled. Yeah, it was also interesting to see how it's also the same in other places. So yeah.
So the question becomes, who is, which representation of Blackness is authentic? Kate, Eva, is there a representation of Blackness that you would say this is authentic? This one is not authentic. This is the one that is authentic. Is there any such thing as authentic Blackness or authentic Africanness?
For me, I don't think so. You know, just because like as we've learned throughout the weeks, like our identities are going to be affected, yes, by our past and our people's past, but also like our own experiences. So whatever we create as our real, I guess, would be authentic. My problem with, okay, not my problem, just my question with the text, I suppose it was, you know, in what they were doing, like creating these Afro styles, like for people for the places that they said these were from, like what does this mean? Because like throughout the text it was like they were saying they were reinventing Africa or recreating Africa, and you know, it was weird for me to read that, I suppose. Like, would people start seeing the, in between quotation marks again, like old or Africa in the continent as primitive because they weren't implementing technological ways of creating the styles, you know? So I don't think there's one authentic Africa, but I'm just questioning the implications of recreating that Africa. Oh, wait, were you not able to hear me this whole time?
I think he was kicked out, but he's back now. I think.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm back now.
Okay.
I'm back now.
Sorry, were you not able to hear anything I said? Or...
No, I was kicked out.
Oh no.
You were trying to explain what your trouble is with what they were doing, calling things Afro this and Afro that.
Yes. So like my kind of issue with it was that the way that they were creating these Afro styles were kind of like complex. They had like technology and chemicals involved. And I was asking like, what would this mean for people who first came up with this area of styling but didn't use such complex things? Like, would they be considered primitive or you know, outdated? You know, I don't think there's one authentic Africa, but I do question the implications of reinventing, you know, and recreating Africa.
Well, yes, I guess we can all be in that place where we actually question the different ways in which we imagine our Africanness, even from the very cultures where we come from, whether it's from a Nigerian culture or a Cameroonian culture or a Malagasy culture or a Mauritanian, or you know, we can all find things within our cultures that we question. Though one would look at it and say, "Oh, this is something Nigerian. It's Igbo or Yoruba or Hausa, so it is Nigerian. It is African." But within that, we will still find things to question within even our cultures within the continent. So to question certain imaginations and certain practices of blackness in the diaspora, I think that's all right. Because it's an imagination of blackness in Brazil or the USA or England or anywhere else, does not imply that we shouldn't question it because it's an imagination of blackness means that we should accept all of it. I don't know if you follow what I'm saying, Kate.
Yeah, I do follow.
Eva, I'd ask for you, is there an authentic Africa, authentic blackness?
That's a difficult question. I think there is maybe a temptation to say yes, in the sense of what I see on the continent. I feel like I am tempted to say that that's the authentic Africa. But then again, if I really think through it, I want to say no, because what Africa is, it's a group of people, individuals, unique individuals, and to say that there is an authentic Africa is almost, to me, feels like then it's about like saying that everybody's the same, which isn't true. So yeah, as much as I want to say that there is, because of what I see and the different cultures and the kind of culture that I see on the continent, I still wouldn't say that there is. I don't want to say that there is an authentic, because then that means that if I don't relate to that, if I don't act like that or don't do those things, then am I being inauthentic African? But then I don't think so. But I don't know. I think that question is very. It depends, maybe.
Kultum, is there an authentic Africa?
I'm I agree with Eva. I think that looking at it from my perspective alone, it means that if I don't see something as an actual African, it's now becoming from only my perspective. And we have different cultures in Africa and different ways people see different things. I don't think it depends on one person. There is no authentic Africa to me personally.
Okay. Who else has an opinion on this? Amy, Wema, is there an authentic Africa based on reading of the Brazilian texts? They are inventing a certain kind of blackness in the Brazilian diaspora, and that article touches on also some of the practices generally in the Black Atlantic, even in the US and all that. I know it references Paul Gilroy, the Black Atlantic. Is there an authentic blackness? Is there an authentic Africa? Who wants to chip in here? Is there an authentic Africa? What do you feel about that? Yes, Letabo, go on.
I think there isn't. Personally, I don't think there is. Also, because of the fact that, like Ava and them said, what if you don't prescribe to it? Then even if you are African and live in Africa, then what happens? And since we live with so many different ways of life within Africa, I mean, also in South Africa, there's so many different variants of what is culturally right, wrong, this. Would that mean that if I don't prescribe to this, would I then not be African or what? So I think there isn't an authentic. There might be certain, maybe common things that make us African, but I don't think there's an authentic way to say this is prescribed exactly that you are African. And
Okay.
this should define you as African, and this is your lock in as African.
Okay. You said something interesting, Letabo. You said there should be something common to all of us. Yes, Eva?
I was just wondering, are you asking the question, you're saying based on the text, right? So based on the text, do we think that there is because reading the text, it does seem like there is an authentic Africa that they're trying to emulate or they're trying to recreate in Brazil. So if it's based on the text, I think it's not wrong to say that there is. But then personally, I was answering on my personal views, so I wasn't sure which one were you asking.
Okay. So yes, based on you've read the text, there's a way that they are representing and imagining Africa. That question of authentic Africa came from, the first way yourself and Kate answered about the uncomfortableness you felt, reading some of the things you read and all that. And that's where then I'm asking, is there then an authentic Africa? Are you not allowed to feel certain, discomfort with the way maybe some person is imagining Africa? And if you're feeling a discomfort with the way some person is imagining Africa, does this still speak to that same question of then you then feel there is an authentic Africa? There should be something that connects us all, that makes us all to say we're African, and you can defend that. If I go somewhere and I say I am African and I'm asked to defend it, what would I say? That would be similar to what Abdullah would say. That would be similar to what Rihanna would say. that'll be similar to what Anastasia would say, or similar to what you, Eva, would say, or Elsie, or Kultum. What is that thing that I can say that you think would cover all of us in our variety and diversity? We agree there's variety, there's diversity. I mean, cultures, religion, language, appetites, tastes, aesthetics. But is there something I would say, I'm African, and this is why, that we can all share and agree on? Or there's nothing at all? Ever since our origins. Who else has a point on that?
I feel like except that we are born or we come from the same place. And okay, some of our countries share a common past based on colonization, but except from that, I don't feel like there is a lot of common ground we can rely on, and I don't feel like this is a problem or an issue.
Okay.
Even if you were to ask a European what makes you European, there's not much common ground between like the French and the German or the Spanish. And it's not an issue because like no one is asking them to prove that they are European enough or that they have a common ground to be able to be identified as European. So I don't feel like we need those defining factors because then it's always in comparison to somebody else. But who are we comparing ourselves?
So if there's nothing that we share that makes us African, can I then claim that I am European? Today, Emmanuel, I mean, I spent about 10 years in England. Can I claim that I am European?
I mean, like I said, there's basically just your place of origin, and for most African countries, like colonial past. But if you say you spent 10 years in England and you get an English passport, then I don't feel like there's anything preventing you from claiming dual nationality.
Okay. Anyone else? Perspective. Perspective, class. Share your perspective on this. Okay. Now, this brings us to actually the issue of place. Place. When our brothers and sisters in the diaspora claim that they are African, on what basis do they make that claim? So the blacks in America or the blacks in Brazil or England, when they claim that they are African, on what basis do they make that claim? There's actually a basis upon which they make that claim. What is that basis on which they make that claim that they are Africans? It's actually pretty simple. Just think about it. The answer is actually pretty simple. This is not. Be more specific, Anastasia. Yes, their heritage, but be much more specific. Again, be more specific, Eva. Be more specific. Think about place. Good, Anastasia. They are shared past as descendants of Africans or African slaves, as in people that were taken from a certain place. Place. So the shared thing between all of us is actually place. They don't claim to be African based on the place they are today. The diaspora, Brazil, those in US, those in Europe, they don't claim to be African based on where they are today. Note that. They're not claiming to be Africans based on where they are today. That's why we say diaspora. They claim to be Africans based on where their ancestors were taken from, the African continent. That is actually the foundation to all their claim. Some could point to, okay, we eat this type of food that our ancestors brought with them 300-400 years ago. Some. In Brazil, that article itself, you heard them talk about Aye, A-I-Y-E, Aye songs. Aye is a Yoruba word, Aye. And in many parts of the diaspora, like the capoeira from Angola, in Cuba, for instance, there are Black communities in Cuba that trace their origin to slaves taken from Cameroon, and there are some practices they still hold till today that their ancestors took with them from Cameroon, the place you know as Cameroon today, to Cuba. Of course, you read the article about Oyotunji and their imagination of a Yoruba lifestyle in a Yoruba village. So, place, place. And for all of us in this classroom right now, the one thing that makes all of us call ourselves African is still place. Still place. And that place is the African continent. That continent referred to as the African continent. If the people of Seychelles, Madagascar, if those Indian Ocean islands, and of course the island where our campus is, if these Indian Ocean islands, if they were just maybe 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers further into the sea, we might perhaps have been considering them to be part of Asia, part of the Asian continent, because there's what they call continental waters. So a certain kilometer from the African coastline, anything within a certain kilometer, I don't know whether it's 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers, I'm not sure what it is, but you can Google to find out what length from the coast is considered your continental water. So any islands within that distance would be considered part of the African continent. Of course, there are other geological features that would also come into being, like it would say, oh, look at the island of Seychelles, Madagascar, look at the outline of Madagascar, look at the outline of continental Africa. You can see that it fits into continental Africa, so it should be African. But it's actually distance, because you can make the same argument for South America. Look at the outline of South America. You can see that the outline of South America, where you have the east coast of South America fits perfectly with the west coast of Africa. But we don't call the South American continent Africa, because a certain distance away. That's how they group these sort of things, So Madagascar, Mauritius, Seychelles, even though you might say, oh, they fit into the African coastline, if they were just a certain distance away, if they had drifted, because these islands and these continents, they drift. There's something known as continental drift. They drift slowly but surely. If at this period they are drifted a certain distance away, perhaps Seychelles would be considered as part of Australia, or Mauritius would be considered as part of Australia. But now they're part of the African continent. So it is not even the presence of Creoles in Mauritius that make Mauritius African. It's not that. It's not the presence of Creoles. That somebody will say, oh, it's the presence of Black people in Mauritius that makes Mauritius African. No, it's not that. It's that the rock that people are living on, called Mauritius, is part of the African continent. Because if you go to Egypt, yeah, they have Coptics in Egypt and they have dark-skinned Egyptians. In North Africa, the whole of North Africa have dark-skinned people, yes. But at the same time, North Africa, you'd find that majority are Arabs. And there are plenty of Arabs who do not consider themselves African, even though they are from Egypt or Tunisia or Morocco or Algeria. They don't consider themselves African. They will tell you that they are from the Middle East. And they will tell you that, oh, their ancestors came from, came from the Arabian continent or the Arabian Peninsula, which is true. But the ancestors came and, occupied North Africa. So as much as you will meet many Arab people from North Africa who don't want to accept that they are African, well, they are on the African continent. Therefore, there's nothing you can do. There's absolutely nothing you can do about that. You're part of the African Union. Well, there's absolutely nothing you can do about that. But does that imply that we're trying to say you are African and that is the only thing you have about you as to your identity? Of course not. You look at the diaspora, they claim Africa. We cannot deny them that claim. We cannot say to them, your ancestors were taken 500 years ago. You are now in North America. You've been in North America for 300, 400, 500 years. And there are some differences now between the culture you subscribe to and the culture of your ancestors that were taken from Africa. Therefore, we don't want you to claim Africa. We reject you. We disown you. We disinherit you. You can't do that. But it's the same argument again that is made by saying African Americans are Americans. They are fully Americans. They've been here for 400 years. They are fully American. They are in this place. They've walked this place, so they are fully Americans. They're fully Americans. So this thing about identity, fluidity to it, all of us, we all share that fluidity. As much as I'm proud to say I am Kenyan, in other contexts, I may not want to put forth my Kenyanness as my first identity. In other contexts, I might want to put forth the fact that I am female as my first identity I want to put forth in a certain context. That may be what I want to put forth first. I'm female. In another context, I might want to put forth first that I am a graduate or I am a student of the most innovative university in Africa, African Leadership University. In other contexts, that might be what I want to put up first. So our identities, even those of us here, our identities are fluid. So there is place, continent. But some of you mentioned a second thing, which is more the theme of this class for this week. Some of you mentioned a certain thing. Some of you mentioned ancestors. You mentioned ancestors, descendants, ancestors. Now, when we are talking about ancestors and descendants, with respect to the theme of this class, what are we talking about when we're talking about ancestors and descendants?
Kinship?
Kinship. So there is place, but our ties to place is directly related to our ties to kinship. Those two things are like this. Our ties to place directly related to our ties also to kinship. So if an Egyptian says, I am Arab, that identity, I am Arab, is not actually a place identity. That identity, I am Arab, is a kinship identity. Can you see that, class?
Yes.
Abdullah, do you want to explain what it means to be Arab from a kinship perspective?
Actually, I'm not sure it's a kinship perspective.
Okay.
I myself, personally, I would think being Arab is to speak Arabic as your first language.
Okay.
It has to do with the language, I think, more than kinship.
Okay.
Um, Personally, I don't really find myself interested in knowing my origins or my ancestors, where did they came from, were they like North Africans or were they Arab immigrants or colonizers? I consider myself African and Arab, and my Arabness comes from the fact that I speak Arabic as my first language.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
I definitely agree with you that today Arab is language, but think 100 years back or 200 years back, the first people that called themselves Arab, did they call themselves Arab solely because of language?
If I would do that, I would think 14 or like more than 1300 years.
Yeah.
No, I think there are other Arab people. They come from the Arab Peninsula.
Yeah. You see,
Yeah.
so he has said, Abdullah actually said something really, really interesting. You see, so you had the migration from the Arab Peninsula into North Africa, and the people who did that migration, they were called Arabs, right? Kinship. They had familial ties, blood ties, and all that. But today he said something very interesting about how many will consider themselves Arab because they speak Arabic. Because, of course, citizenship has expanded in these countries to going beyond kinship. So a person from Egypt speaks Arabic and would say, I'm Arab. But even if you go down to their genealogies, they might not have been part of that group that originally migrated from the Arabian Peninsula. But there is kinship. And in many communities, kinship and language are still tied together. They're still tied together in many communities. The Arab case is because that population group has really expanded Africa and Asia and all that. But within Africa, within South America, even Europe itself, there is still a strong ties between kinship and language. So you say I am Kikuyu or Luo in Kenya, or I am Kalenjin. Now, the people who would say they are Kalenjin, you would discover that they have deep related blood ties. Groups that have those kind of blood ties, is very common within those groups that when you meet one another and you say, I am Kalenjin, they would want to know your particular clan, or they would want to know your family name within that group. They do this because they want to know the distance between you and the next person you are talking to within that group. They're concerned that let it not be that the next person that you're talking to that says they are Kalenjin, let it not be that you're very close in relations. They're concerned about marriage and all these sort of things, marriage and all that kind of stuff. So when you think about being African, you think place, but you also think kinship. That said, will the people from Seychelles or Madagascar or any of the Indian Ocean islands, will they say they're African and point to kinship as what makes them African? Who can respond to that? Those from the Indian Ocean islands, whether it's Mauritius or Seychelles, Madagascar, any of the Indian Ocean islands, when they think about, okay, I am African, will they be able to point to kinship as the thing that makes them African?
I think it's a difficult question. I mean, as I said, like some people might, but I know at least where I'm from in Madagascar, I'm like from the center, and food, for example, okay, I really don't want to make any assumptions here, but like the food that we eat is very similar to Asian food or like Japanese food. And in many other aspects of our lives, like even the way that we look, you might think that some of us would find more kinship in like Asia, right? So I think most often we would actually point to the place rather than kinship, to propose our Africanness.
Anastasia, what do you think?
So when it comes to Mauritius, I feel like so if we're focusing on the Creoles, for example, we wouldn't be able to like refer to kinship because most of us we don't even know which group we were part of, or we cannot trace back. But like personally, I cannot trace back my family tree further than my grandparents. So there's no way that like we can point to kinship.
Okay. But then think about this, right? African Americans actually do point to kinship as part of their proof that they are Americans. How is it that African Americans use kinship to argue that they are Americans? Anyone, how is it that African Americans, they point to their ancestry? Because ancestry is kinship. African Americans point to their ancestry to prove that they are as American as anybody else. How is it that African Americans are able to do that? Use kinship to make their claims to this land called the United States.
Isn't it because their ancestors got American citizenship once they were considered free men?
That's one way to look at it. Who else has a response? That African Americans, they were brought from their ancestors were brought from the African continent. They are here, yet they are able to use kinship to prove that they are Africans. At the same time, use kinship to prove that they are Americans.
I mean, their ancestors, at a point or another, I suppose, kind of integrated and then created their own identity in America. So, I think that might have to do with it. Like today, African Americans, some of their identity, they tie it to this, I guess, recognition that they were Americans in the past.
Interesting response. Well, kinship is a fact, right? I have a father, I have a mother, I have a brother, I have a sister, I have a grandfather, a grandmother. So kinship itself is a fact. The relationship is a fact, right? But the claims I make about that relationship are constructed. So think carefully about what I've just said here. Kinship itself is a fact. I have a father, I have a mother, but the claims I make as a result of those relationships are constructed. Do you all follow that statement about kinship itself, the relationship we have with people, blood relationships with people is a fact, but the claims we make on those relationships are constructed. You might be thinking, wow, what exactly is he saying? Let me use an example. Right. I may have an uncle, my father's brother. So I have my father's brother, it's my uncle. I have my mother's brother, it's my uncle. They are both my uncles. Now, if I have grown up in a home where my father's brother, my paternal uncle, was always around, if I've grown up in a home where my paternal uncle was always around, always there, from when I was born to when I become an adult, but my maternal uncle was never around. I only got to know my maternal uncle maybe when I was already 20 years old. In terms of claims to kinship, to whom can I make more claim? That's simple enough to answer. To whom can I make more claim?
Your paternal uncle.
My paternal uncle. Anyone wants to explain why I can make more claim to my paternal uncle than to my maternal uncle? Are they not both, in terms of kinship, are they not both the same distance from me? So how come I can make more claim to my paternal uncle than my maternal uncle? Class, these are simple stuff. Just explain it, because we all have those relationships. We all have them.
Because
Maybe
you had
the one.
more
I'm sorry.
time.
Okay, two people are speaking at the same time. One person go.
I was going to say because you had more time to create a proper relationship with your paternal uncle than with your maternal uncle.
Yeah. So the lived experience of kinship matters, right? Class, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The lived experience of kinship matters. So I have a father, I have a mother. But if when I was born, my father and mother took me and placed me with my grandparents, and I lived with my grandparents to adulthood, and my father and mother never came around, who would I have more claims to? My biological parents or my grandparents that I've lived with?
Your grandparents.
Grandparents.
Grandparents. So there's the biological fact of kinship. There's the blood relationship of kinship. It's there. It's fact, right? I have a dad, I have a mom. But there's also the social relation of kinship. Social relations to kinship. And when you now begin to talk about the social relations to kinship, it's not just, it then becomes affected not just by your lived experience, it also becomes affected by the societal construct where we live. Again, I don't know how many of you were able to watch that video that I put on GCU Learn about 25 ways to understand kinship. Anyone? Did anyone at all look at that? It was just a 10-minute, 12-minute video. Anyone? Okay, I can see that don't want bother to watch it. Now, if you'd watched that video, you'd have seen how he taught us how to do the kinship diagrams and everything, what you'd have seen in the Evans Pritchard readings. He taught us how to do all the kinship diagrams and everything. But he went on to explain how this thing about the social construction around kinship. There's the biological relations, but there's also the social construction. He went on to explain how in some cultures, the best person for you to marry in some cultures, they have it that the best person for you to marry is your aunt's son or your aunt's your maternal aunt's your maternal uncle's son or daughter. In some cultures, that's the best person for you to marry, because in some cultures The person that has claims over you as a son or daughter is your maternal uncle in some cultures. It's not your biological father in some cultures. So your mother's brother is the one that have parental rights over you in some cultures. We have a culture like that in Cameroon. It's your mother's brother. It's your mother's brother that decides the school you go to and all these other big decisions that for a number of us is our fathers. In some cultures, is your mother's brother. That is the key person in your life, your mother's brother. Whether you're male, whether you're female, doesn't matter. It's your mother's brother. And in those cultures, if you're female, the best person that they would recommend for you to marry in those cultures, if you're female, is your mother's brother's son, your cousin. If you're male, it's your mother's brother's daughter. In those cultures, that's the best person they would require that you marry. So look at that. But for many of us, in our cultures, marrying your cousin, whether it's your mother's brother, your mother's sister's child, or your father's brother's child, in some of us, in our cultures, marrying your cousin is a taboo. Not so? Class, is that not so?
It is.
You know, in some of our cultures, it's a taboo, strictly forbidden. The reason they will give you is kinship. Oh, our understanding of kinship. You can't do this. You can't marry your cousin. But here are some other cultures where the way they construct their own kinship, the best person for you to actually marry is your cousin. So what am I getting at here? It's about kinship is a fact. You have father, you have brothers, but there's also a social construct around kinship that affects the way we make claims on kinship. In every culture, the kind of claim I can make on my brother or my sister as a Cameroonian is different. The kind of claim that an American can make on their brother and their sister. Yes, Eva.
I'm just trying to understand how does this relate to the fact that African Americans can say that they're American based on kinship, because I don't understand how.
Yeah. So the point is that what we do with kinship is left to us. The kind of claims we put around kinship and how we use it, like a sword. Oh, you can't marry this person. You can only marry this person. You know, these are claims. These are constructs that we make. So African Americans in the United States have been able to use claims of kinship to win citizenship rights in the United States because they were refused citizenship rights for so many years. They were said, oh, you're slaves. But they've been able to say, look, I have been here for 100 years. I have been here for 200 years, and they are able to prove it, show it. How long have you been here? You, who feels that you're fully American? Because some of those who were denying them citizenship, some of them had only been here for like 100 years or 200 years. They could only lay claim to being here through their grandparents. But they had now risen, they had become governors, they had become senators, some had risen, become president in the United States. And they want to make all these laws that refuse you, an African American, from full rights also as a citizen, because these things have implication, whether you can run for president or you cannot run for president. They want to deny you. So African Americans are able to say, hey, but wait a minute. How far back have you been here? You know, you are telling me I'm not American. How far back have you been here? And compared to how far back I have been here, we were here before this nation even became a nation called the United States of America. Right? They were here. This country only became a nation in 1776. But they were being brought over right from the 15th, 16th century to work plantations. So look at my genealogy. So the way we use kinship for benefits, the way we use kinship for benefits is based on our context. Everywhere you go. In Mauritius, there are people of Indian descent who would trace their kinship right to the village they came from, that their ancestors came from in India. There's a reason why they do that. They don't just do that for fun. There's a reason why they do that. There are certain claims they want to make. That's why they do that. So there's biological relations, but there are social claims around it for the way we then live our lives. Now, that then takes us to the issue of then families we choose. Because if there are social constructs around relationships, can we not also build those kinds of social constructs around relationships that are not blood related? Relationships that are not blood based, because kinships are relationships that are blood based. And we then build all these claims, social construction around these relationships, whereby some of it is actually just built by our society and have no anchor to blood itself. Like, oh, in some cultures you can marry your cousin, in some other cultures you cannot marry your cousin. Why is it that in one culture you can marry your cousin and in another culture you cannot marry your cousin? Why in that culture where it is a taboo? Is it a taboo because of blood? As in, if you marry your cousin, maybe both of you will give birth to children that are deformed. Is it a taboo because of that kind of factor that if you marry your cousin, hey, biologically things will just go completely wrong? These other cultures that you can marry your cousin, are they not observing those things going wrong? If they're observing those things going wrong, why are they still perpetuating that you can marry your cousin? So there is something going on there. We are making these social constructions not necessarily always based on biology. Not always based on biology. So if we can make these social constructions around relationships of blood, but not based on biology, why can't we make this same kind of social constructions on people who are of not kith and kin with us because of blood? That's the segue into families we choose. But let's take a break. So think about that. Families we choose. And hopefully, I hope some of you have your diagrams that you've done that show your blood-based family and your non-blood-based family, if I can put it that way. Your blood-based family and your non-blood-based family. Because we just established that you can have non-blood-based family because these relationships, we constructed them. My relationship with my father and the way it works out, it's a construct. In some other culture, it works out differently. My relationship with my brother or sister and the way it works out in my culture is a construct. Other cultures have constructed it differently. So let's look at how that works out on families we choose and why families we choose could be stronger somewhere and not as strong somewhere else. What are the reasons behind this? But let's take a break. Let's convene back. It's 2 minutes past the hour. Let's convene back at 15 past the hour. Hello, class. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So in the period that we've just gone through, I guess the objective for me that this period that we've just gone through is just to establish to you all about issues around kinship. Kinship is important, is central, and um, you can establish your kinship back many, many generations. And often when we do that, we use that genealogical trace we make, we use it to establish certain claims. Um, Claims to responsibility of my father to me, claims of responsibility of my mother to me, claims of responsibility of my ethnic group to me. But at the same time, the ethnic group also uses that to establish claims of me to the group. You know, my parents can also use that to establish claims of me to them. As a son, oh, you are the first son. Oh, you are the first daughter. Oh, we sent you to school and now you have to care for us. There are all these claims we establish as a result of kinship. The Brazilians, the Afro Brazilians, are doing the same thing. They're establishing certain claims as a result of kinship. You know, their ancestors came from Africa, so they are African. And they're using that to now develop certain ways of being, certain ways of living, and they're putting the claim on that ways of living. They're calling it African. The only legitimacy they have that they can use to brand all those hair products, skin products, nails, to brand it African is because of kinship. They can establish their kinship. When they say they're African, they're doing that through kinship. And they're using that kinship now to make certain claims on certain products and certain aesthetics that pleases them. They are calling those aesthetics African. Maybe for marketing purposes, maybe for pride, maybe to push back against oppression. But you know, they're using kinship to brand, to then brand these things as African. In America, the African Americans use kinship as one way to claim citizenship. I'm as American as anybody else. But we've seen that kinship, you know, we can make all these constructs around kinship. And because we can make all these constructs around kinship, Kurt Weston has then taken that forward to say, we can also develop these kinds of relations with people who are not blood related to us. These kinds of intimate, close, caring, supportive, till death do us part type relationships, even with people who are not our blood relatives, in families we choose. So before we go into the strengths or weaknesses or likes or dislikes from your point of view on that concept of families we choose, what it can do, what it cannot do, and all of that, those who've been able to do that exercise of, you know, your blood kinship and your families you choose, would like you to, you know, share with us. Anyone who's been able to do that, who can put on their camera and share with us, or use the share screen and share with us what they've been able to put together.
I can put on my camera.
Yeah, or use share screen. Anyone, if you did it on your laptop, share screen. If you did it on an exercise book, yeah, your camera, and you can share with us.
Hi.
Hello.
So I made mine on a piece of paper. Um, I don't know if you guys can see, but this is like my blood family. So at the very bottom, I started like where I from the person higher up or older that I know of. So that's my great grandfather. I did put the name in Malagasy as well, and in English it translates to literally the father of my grandfather. So then over here I have the children of my great grandfather. So in the middle I put my grandfather because he's the one that, well, to which from which I ended up, I suppose. And yeah, I put here his brothers, then my dad, and over here I am, and here are my aunts, so my dad's sister. I don't know if you want me to explain some other things. If you guys have questions.
Anyone questions for Kate?
I did want to say that I think it's something really interesting. My great grandfather, he didn't use his surname for all of his sons. So for like, he had 4 of them, and 3 of them have different like surnames. Only my grandfather had Rambula Manana as his surname, and I don't know if that's something other people share in the class. I thought it was really interesting.
Okay. Anyone else wants to share? All right, Kate. So what about your families you choose?
This one I had a bit more struggle with because here it is. I'm here at the bottom, and in the middle there's Amy Okleti, actually, to whom, you know, I want to have this relationship of responsibility. I'm sorry, there's a lot of noise. And yeah, 2 other friends, which are like, I suppose, my best friends, because in the second reading, these are like magistral relationships, and I just thought for me these are the relationships that mean the most to me today. And then here, it's relationships that still mean a lot to me, but less than these. And at the top, the relationships that are important are, you know, the least, I suppose. Yeah, I kind of struggled with this because, you know, in my blood family, we have ways of interacting with each other. Like, of course, you know, we have unconditional love and support, but at the same time, there's a lot of screaming matches, and sometimes we drive each other literally insane. And I was like thinking, like, is that, if I have that relationship with someone else, like, is that gonna be my chosen family, or do I want to look for other things? And yeah, that's why I'm saying I had a bit of struggle with that one, but I'm happy with what I have. So yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you. And for what you just shared about, you know, trying to compare both of them and screaming matches and all of that. But thank you. Eva, you want to share?
Yes. The only thing is, I do have a diagram for my blood family, but not for my. I can't explain the other kind of kinship, but I don't have a diagram for that one. Oh. I'll share my screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So there's my diagram. Sorry, it's not very nice looking. And I hope you can.
Might have to,
Hello?
you might have to increase the size, like you might have to zoom in.
Okay. Let me try. Better.
Okay. Okay, so we can see
Yeah, I think that's the.
right at the base, we
Oops.
can see the river, and we can see in clear temple. Oops, large.
So
Okay, it's okay. Yeah, we can see.
sorry, it's breaking. Can you repeat?
We can see.
Okay. Okay. So I also put the names in Malagasy, like Kate. And so I started my great grandparents. I think, yeah, yes, the great grandparents. So there's my mom's side on the right and my dad's side on the left. And their siblings, the Piretampu, and then Raibi Rinbi, my grandparents, and my Ray, that's my father, Rin, my mother, and then Eva at the end with my two brothers, Piretampu. And Piretampu literally just means like sharing one heart, united in the heart. That's what siblings mean in Malagasy. Yeah, so I don't know if you needed more details, but this is what I came up with.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that translation.
And I don't have much. Sorry?
No, I'm saying I like that translation. United in the heart. That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was really nice too. I actually didn't know that before doing this exercise, so that was something I learned.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't really know how my siblings the siblings of my great grandparents. I have no idea how many kids they had. I have no idea. Yes, and now on the kinship of, I mean, the family that you create. To me, I think growing up, of course, I had my best friends and all of that, but I wouldn't say that they would. I would never call them my kins in that sense. I really started. Let me stop sharing. I really started um, relating to that concept of creating your own family when I traveled, and I was abroad for a few years, for almost 4 years, away from my blood family. That's when I understood this concept of family away from family. And basically, I lived with a bunch of people, a group, people from all sorts of background. There were parents, there were older people, there were younger people, younger than me, singles, married, with kids. And together, it really felt like family because we were all from another part of the world and we needed people to care for us and we needed people to care for. And I think that's how I understood that concept. And it's whenever they needed help, I was there. If I needed help, they were there. And to this day, that relationship lives on. So yeah, that's the closest thing I have to what you would call like non-blood kinship. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to share? Anyone else in class want to share? Amy, Wema, Kultum, Anastasia, Abdullah. Anyone else want to share their uh, genealogical diagrams, block family, families to choose, or anyone else want to talk about their blood family and then talk about families they choose, families they've chosen? Anyone? All right. Let me share this. Thank you, Kate and Eva, for sharing. Um, okay. Let me share this. So first, this is the link for those who may want to look at it later. This is the link. This actually speaks to the video that I would need you all to go and watch on 25 ways to do kinship. And it's about the kinship charts, how to do a kinship chart in using anthropological denotation. So this is what is a kinship chart, and create your own kinship chart now. So if you go back and watch that 12 minutes video on Just You Learn, you would see all the lessons in here. You would see they're illustrated for you. So when you're doing your kinship charts, this is how you denote a male, and that's how you denote a female. Now, if the person has passed away, there's a slash like that to show that they are diseased. Non-specific gender, and then this is married, connect, like sibling, sister, brother, divorced from, M for mother, F for father, S for son, D for daughter, B for brother, Z for sister, H for husband, W for wife. And then the straight line is connect parents and children. And then you come down and you see an example of a kinship chart here. Can everyone see my screen and this kinship chart?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
So what you've just seen here, that I've just breezed through in about a minute, you can read all this for yourself. And then there's also that video on GCU Learn on kinship and how to chat it, because you will all have to do this. When you're doing your summative portfolio too, you would all have to put this in there. The same way you put in your images in your summative portfolio one, you would all have to put this in there. So there's no escaping it. There is no escaping this. What is ego? Interesting question. The ego should be simple understanding that should be the self, relationship identified by the concept of central entity called ego. When you have the symbols, the self, the assertive self, ego, the assertive self. So the self, but the assertive self. I guess in this context, it is being used for the assertive parent, the ego. But read that and get familiar. In this case, the female ego is still green, but it's a bit darker green. The male ego a little bit darker red. So go through that, go through the video, because you will get to you will get to do this. You would see from this simple one that is done here, that the genealogy they are focused on is the female. This is the one they are asserting right here, the female. Um, the husband, there's no color in there, so they're not focusing on this branch. They're focusing on this branch here. They got two sons, and then they are focusing on this branch, going through this branch up. This son is diseased, that father is diseased, that mother is diseased, that father is diseased, you know. So you'll have to get to do this. Right. So the next couple of minutes that we have left, I want to take us then back to the question of for those of you who read Kate Weston's article, think back to what she is putting out there in the context of people being disowned by their families because they're gay, you know, and the West Coast of America, California, was this place where lots of gay people could go to and really find a supportive community. So she did a research on that community and came up with concept of families we choose in the context of persons in the US culture where they were disowned by their families. And you know, this is a real thing here. Disown, disinheritance, total cutoff. And for some of these persons, all of a sudden they find themselves just alone. Because some of these cultures, you don't have that relationship with an uncle, an aunt, even grandparents in some cases. Your parents have cut you off. We disown you, want nothing to do with you. Sometimes it even goes to, you might be an only child, or you might have siblings who also go with that and say, we disown you. All of a sudden, as if you find yourself a pariah. And they go on to California, there's a supportive community, and they begin to create these relationships that for them becomes a family, a new family. Now, the question then becomes, can this happen in your context? I don't know what your context is. I mean, your cultural context. Can this happen in your cultural context? Even if it may not happen to that extent, disownment, or has it happened? Think about your own cultural context. And in your cultural context, can you then create this sort of families you choose where you come to believe that the ties that bind you are as strong as your blood ties? Because for these persons, you might say, oh no, it cannot be as strong as blood ties. But for these persons who have been disowned, they're actually in a place where, hey, they no longer have any kind of blood ties. The blood ties now does not mean anything anymore. So for them, is a blood tie a strong link or a weak link if it doesn't mean anything anymore? And they are creating these other links. Would these other links not even look stronger than the blood ties? If the blood ties can just be snap, go, I'm done with you. What is it like in your own context? Or what do you think about, can these families we choose be as strong or even stronger than our biological families? Yes, Abdullah.
I'm sorry, but before I answer, I wanted to ask a question.
Yes.
Is this even legal, like disowning children? Is it legal?
Oh, it can be legal. Okay, for disowning children, let me not say it can be legal, but you see how people make that legal is that they can remove you from their will. You're no more, I can decide that you cannot inherit from me. I can actually make a legal document that says, yes, you're my biological child, but my inheritance, nothing is going to go to you. I can legally do that.
Uh-huh.
But but I don't know if one can legally say you are no more my child, legally by law. I'm not sure at this point, but I know that one can say, even if you're biologically my child, you're not inheriting anything from me. I have a right to do that.
I was thinking from the perspective that as a parent you have a responsibility towards your children, and this responsibility is just unconditional. You brought them to life and you are responsible towards them no matter what they become. So disowning them is just something that I don't understand how you can actually have the right to do. I
Well,
understand the choice, but I don't understand that you gave yourself the right to do that.
well, well, in the US and in Europe, once you are 18, you are an adult. Your parents can kick you out of the house. Your parents can legally kick you out of the house. Your parents can legally kick you out of the house. Legally, they can kick you out of the house at 18.
Okay, still disowning is a different story. Disowning is to tell someone you're not my child anymore, I'm not your father.
Well, if I can legally kick you out of my house and I can legally say you will not inherit a penny from me, what else is there that can be worse than those two things in terms of me saying, okay, I've disowned you, you can no longer step foot in my house. Your parent can say that to you. You can no longer step foot in my house. And if you do, they can call the police to arrest you.
Mhm.
They have a legal right to do that. So if a parent does that to you and says, you will not inherit a penny from me, have they not disowned you as a child? What else do you think they should do that will prove that they've disowned you as a child?
Yeah, I see.
Is there anything else you think they can do worse than that?
Yeah, it is always worse.
Don't step foot in my house ever, and you will not get a penny from me. What worse can a parent do to a child other than that? Kate, Eva, Elsie, Litabo, is there anything worse a parent can do to a child other than that? Again, other than perhaps take a gun and shoot you. What else?
No, never mind.
But the question remains, do you see those relationships that Kate Rastin is describing? Do you see us having those kinds of relationships in your context as strong or stronger than your blood kinship ties?
Yes. Okay. To address that question, I believe yes, and the readings I had related to it a lot. Um, I have strong ties with my family, uh, or what I prefer to like. There are individual ties, so our home is not really what psychologists call a functional family. It's not a functional family. And so I have individual relationships with members, with my father, with my mother, with some of my sisters. And these bonds are strong, and I work on them the same way that I work on my other bonds. But this function had somewhat forced me, or like somewhat opened a lot of space in my life for other sorts of relationships to be as strong as blood relationships. So my relationship with my wife is very strong. My relationship with my friends, a couple of them, one or two friends, I consider them family themselves. And when they travel and they come here, they crash on the couch. We sleep together in the same house. I invite them. This is like my house is somewhat has a space in it for them, and they know it and they feel it, and it's that strong. And they're just strangers. They're friends. They are people with whom I share no blood ties, and I consider them very, very close figures in my life that their existence is very core to my own existence. Like it's like I exist in them and they exist in me. So that is one thing. The other thing that I related to was the notion that when you are not when you're forced, or when you choose families, when you choose to formulate different structures of families, it's like you are writing a book on blank paper. You are you are discovering everything from scratch. There's no cultural landmarks to guide you, and this makes the journey full of thrill and anxiety at the same time, or confusion. And I have lived that, and I continue to live it with my wife. Actually, I there's this structural stereotype of a marriage, what a man should do and what a woman should do, that we both do not fit in, and so we are constantly making the relationship on our terms,
Okay.
as
But,
well as living it. And
but,
so yeah, this
but if I were to correct you here, your wife is not family you choose in that same thing. Your wife is actually considered kinship by blood.
yeah, it's a family. It's considered the family I choose.
No, your wife is considered kinship by blood. Once she's become your wife,
Yeah,
it's now kinship by blood. It's now in that relation of kinship
yeah.
by blood. Once she's become your wife. So it is people outside of that relationship, outside of birth and outside of marriage. You know, it's about people outside of birth and outside of marriage. You know, kinship is established through marriage. Anyway, I want to hear from others in the class. Kultum, in your context, can you really have families you choose where the bonds can even become stronger than your biological family?
Yes, I believe so. So when I went to high school, it was boarding high school, so I didn't really get to meet my parents most of the time. I had to like make friends with those ones. And, you see them from different perspectives. It was 6 years, so you have developed this close knit family with people that even become a sister figure to you, and you can tell them anything you want. You meet their parents on visiting days. You get closer than ever. Anything that happens, you at least you update them first before you update your actual brother. That's when you realize that this person is more like a sister to you, the amount of time you have spent together and the trust that both of you have been able to acquire.
Interesting. Wema, in your context, can there be families we choose that are stronger bonds than our biological blood families? Wema? Wema is not reachable. Elsie, you want to share your views here? Can there be families you choose with bonds that are even stronger than your birth biological family?
I definitely believe so. Um, the family you choose is, I feel like I would have to like give you a little bit of context from where I'm coming from. My family, my extended family is not together, not in like they're together on the face, but they don't really stand up for each other. If one of them was in trouble, you'd find the other ones laughing instead of helping, you know what I mean? So in that situation, you find that the people who you choose, the people who constantly choose to support you and to be there when you need them instead of laughing at you when you're down, are the people who are stronger to you than maybe blood.
Interesting. Okay, let me then turn the question in another way. It looks like for, I can't say all of you, but it looks like, at least for your generation, more and more of you are saying, yes, we can have relationships outside of blood relationships where the bonds are so strong or could even be stronger than my blood family. It looks like, at least a number of you say, yes, it can be. I know there might be others who might still say, no, it cannot be. But at least there are those of you who says it can be. Now, let me throw this question back. Do you think for your parents' generation, they would hold this kind of perspective that yes, they can have relations who are not blood families, and those relationships can be stronger than those that are from blood families. Do you think in your parents' generation, you would find them saying yes, the way some of you are just saying, yes, it can be? Do you think in your parents' generation, you can actually find that kind of an answer where they would give an emphatic, yes, that can happen? Kate, what do you think? And then Eva, what do you think? Your parents' generation, would they really readily say, yes, that can happen? You can have families out there that stronger than our blood relative families. Okay?
No, for me, I don't think so. I mean, today my parents even tell me all the time that there's never going to be anyone ever who's going to love you more than I do and give you gifts like I do. No, I don't think so. But you know, I think a part of it is because our generation, we're just more exposed, I suppose, to other ways of thinking. And I don't assume that for my parents it was the same. Like for them, what their parents told them was the way. But we, like us, we read things on social media, like at school and such, like we get such ideas, and then from there we have more input for the families we choose. And I think that's why, yeah. But I don't think my parents.
What do you think, Eva? Your parents' generation and yours? Letabo, your hand was up.
Oh yeah, yes, my hand was up. I think for me it would be a mix, because when I was also going through formulating my ones, I also tried the conversation with my mom and also with a few of her friends as well. And it was quite a mixed reaction from their generation. So when it came to kids, they all said no on that fact that, for their kids, it will always be them. It should always be them. But when it came to like their personal relationship with people outside of that, like brothers, parents, and things, they said some said yes, friends can be better. Others said no, so it was a mixed reaction on my side. So I think it would be a mix depending also on the type of nature of their relationship. But I know a lot of them leaned more to yes, friends can have a bit of a stronger bond than family.
It is not really better. It's really that sense of responsibility. At least in my parents' generation, right? My father, always had this, because he was the first son of his father, always felt this sense of responsibility, total sense of responsibility to his parents, to his siblings, and all that. I mean, to that extent where it could even be that it's time to pay school fees for his kids, and maybe a brother, sister, parent somewhere, some emergency came up, and he would even be conflicted between, oh, should I handle this or should I pay my son's school fees and things like that. He would even be conflicted as deeply as that. That deep sense of responsibility, which I don't necessarily feel the same. I mean, between there is a family emergency somewhere and my child's school fees, for me, it's no brainer. I mean, I'm not even going to think about it. It's just no sense of conflict within me at all. You see, but for my father, there was sense of conflict. You see, so it's that thing, that deep sense of responsibility that people then tend to feel because of blood relationship. Can we have that with families we choose? Eva, it looks like now you're up.
Yes, I'm back. Had some internet issues. I don't think my parents would think that their chosen families or chosen bonds per se would be stronger than bloodline, because exactly of what you just said, it's a matter of responsibility, and this notion of it's unconditional when it comes to your people from your own blood. And even for myself, I wouldn't say, I mean, I think chosen families can be great and can be really supportive, but because it's based on a choice that's my issue with chosen families. It's all because I'm choosing to be there for you, you're choosing to be there for me. The day you choose not to be there for me, then what's happening? And the thing is, it's voluntary. They do not have the responsibility to take care of me if they don't feel like it one day. So I think that's where my issue is with chosen family. It's great and all, but I think with blood family, I mean, and I understand that it's not everybody's case, and there are people from my blood family that maybe wouldn't choose to be there for me. But I mean, in my context, I know that I can depend more on my blood family, and I know that my parents feel the same as well than on my chosen family. Like, I know there's someone who's gonna be there for me in this whole tribe. Someone, you know.
So let me ask the last question, then we call it a day. Do we think kinship ties in Africa are weakening between our parents, our grandparents, our parents, and us? Do we think that kinship ties are, I'm not saying they have dissolved, I'm not saying they are no more there, I'm using the word carefully. Do we think that kinship ties are weakening? Anastasia, do you want to comment on that? Do you think that kinship ties are weakening?
I do feel like kinship ties are weakening, but I don't think that it's a situation or a problem happening only in Africa. I feel like it's a very global problem.
Why do you call it a problem? Problem? No, I didn't call it a problem.
Not necessarily a problem, but there's just like a disconnect. There's just a growing disconnect between, even if I'm talking about me and my friends, we are very much disconnected from our own parents. And to me, it might not be an issue, but my mom is always complaining about how I never call home or I never ask how we are doing. Like, I can go an entire month without talking to mom. And for me, it's just fine. But like, to them, it's an issue. And I don't feel like it's just an African thing. I think it's a global thing, and it's related to maybe the way we interact through social media and other things.
But then why I ask that question is because if you hear our parents speak all across Africa, if you hear our parents speak, one of the things they normally say about why Africa is different from the West, they normally talk about family. They normally say, oh, in Africa, we care for family. You would hear that kind of discourse commonly across Africa. I'm sure you must have heard it in your different contexts, right? Kate, Eva, Emma.
Yeah, we heard it, but I just feel like even when it's said in an African context, I feel like it doesn't matter where. People always care a lot about their families. They just show it in very different ways.
And even in the development literature, in the economics literature, you know, they talk about the black tax or the African tax on Africans. And even till date, you would hear about how Africans sent a lot of money home from Europe and America. You know, you would always hear, even in my generation, you would always hear those stories about, oh, we work and we have to support this, we have to support, and even me that I've told you that, oh, it's not a conflict within me about if there's an emergency, and it's about that emergency to family and my child. For me, I just pay my child's school fee. I don't even think about it. But even me sitting here, I just lost an aunt recently. I had to send money home for the burial of that aunt. You know, I got my dad back in Africa. My dad is a property owner. He's a property owner. But if my dad is sick, right, my dad is going to call me and tell me, oh, I'm sick, oh, this and that and that. And I have to send money home. Thankfully, I may not have to send the whole thing or send something really, really large because he's a property owner. I don't tell him this, but I feel, hey, this man is a property owner. He has somewhere where, you know, he can get something. But I still feel that sense of responsibility to send money home. I can tell you that my European and American friends don't feel that. I can actually tell you that as a fact. That my American friends and friends from Europe don't feel that. When we're all studying out there on scholarships and all that, I'm sending money home They are using their money to travel around Europe, travel around the world. So even in our generation, there's still that sense of responsibility that I can still tell you our friends in Europe and America don't feel the same at this point in time. You know, so I would agree with you all that kinship ties is weakening, but at the same time, I would still tell you it's still fairly strong in Africa. You know, both things can go side by side. It's still fairly strong. It's weakening, but it's still fairly strong. You know, any quick word from anyone before we call it a day? Abdullah, we have to meet after class, but any quick word from anyone? Last word from anybody on any of this? I guess not. I guess we're all at saturation point. So thank you all for coming to the class. Kinship is a big deal all over the world, but in different places, the constructs are different. In some places, the constructs are stronger than in some other places. But more and more, the concept of families we choose is becoming also a lived reality for people all over the world, including in Africa. So see you all on Thursday. I will share week 8. Today, before the day runs out, I will then share our week 8 readings and all of that before today runs out. But see you all on Thursday. You all take care.
See you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was insightful indeed. All right, Abdullah, what can I do for you?
Hello, sir. I have an issue that I think is recurring. Like, took me some time to put my hands on it. And the issue is, it's hard for me to think like a social scientist. It's something that I need your help with. I think initially I am interested in psychology. What I wanted to do in college was psychology, but I couldn't do that. And I'm perfectly happy with social sciences. But still, I have been interested in psychology for like 3 years. I've read a lot in psychology. My primary thoughts come in individual orientation, like psychology orientation. And so I noticed that most of my writings, most of my submissions, they tend to how do I say this? Lean into psychology more than in social sciences, and I don't like that. I want to think like a social scientist and write like a social scientist. And so that's the main thing that I really needed your help with. The others are just, I'm asking you for resources about how to read, skimming, skipping, scanning, taking notes. If you have resources that you feel are very useful, instead of the ones that are just everywhere, I would be more than happy to go through that. Because it takes me a long time to read. I know readings take a long time, but I feel like I take much longer than I should be taking. At the same time, I want to work on these skills. Um, and the third part is, well, in my last submission, or the one that was like week 2, I think, no, week 1 or week 2, I'm not sure which one, I shared something, and your feedback was that it's too private. I'm not
War and conflict.
I'm sorry, come again?
I think it's a report submission in war and conflict. It's the second one. Okay. Yeah, it's the second one. Because
It's the second.
about just about your hair is the second one where you talked about conflict.
Conflicts, yes. And so I'm not sure how to draw this line. It's a problem that I have with my life in general. But how do I draw the line between personal and just things that I can share?
I don't think I was trying to talk about personal or non-personal. I was more concerned with language. So I can still say my mother and dad fight all the time. I can still say that. But I would probably use a language like my mom and dad fight all the time. I would not use a language like my dad beats up my mom all the time. You see what I'm talking about here? It's 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 language. It's not really um, describing a lived situation. There is a language you use that is more mild. Yeah, language. There's a language you use that is more mild than other kind of language. And it's about saying, okay, I am writing this thing for the public, even though it's a class assignment, but the mindset is I am writing this thing for the public. So my language has to be mild. It's just that.
Okay. But so I don't understand, like if I there are two statements that you said. My dad beats my mom all the time, and my mom and dad fight all the time. And the two statements, they don't express the same meaning.
Well, my parents fight all the time, already establishing that their relationship is conflictual, and that's good enough. The nature of the conflict, you do not necessarily have to go into the nature of the conflict. So saying my mom and dad fight all the time is already establishing that their relationship is conflictual. But to say my dad beats my mom, it's now being more specific, going to the nature of the conflict. And I'm trying to say sometimes we don't need to, writing for the public, we don't need to always talk about the nature, the exact nature of things. We can leave it at a higher level of language speak. You know? So it's basically that when you've written what you want to write, just go through it a second time and go through it a third time and just keep asking as you're going through it a second and third time. It's just to ask yourself, okay, can I make this milder? If you feel, oh, there's no other way I can make this milder, fine. But that's just my thing. Just go through it the second time and say, okay, my language, can it be milder? If you think if my language is milder and it won't express what I want to express, it's okay. There's no law against saying that you can't actually say things as they are in public. I mean, there's absolutely no law against that. Nobody's going to penalize you for that. It's not like I'm going to penalize you for that. Nobody will. It's just, hey, is it possible? If you think it's not, it's still fine, totally.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And,
About the
and in terms of thinking like a social scientist, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to send you a book. It's a book because one of the ways one gets to think about social scientists is to understand sociology. So I'm going to send you a book. It's a first year textbook on sociology,
Mhm.
and start from the beginning and try to read the whole book. It's a very easy book to read. It's an American textbook. But it's about trying to understand what sociology is and how to think like a sociologist. And that's the best I can do right now.
Yeah, I think that will do it.
Okay.
What's the book?
I'll
You will
send.
send it to me?
I have a copy of the book. So, yeah, I'll send you a copy of the book. Yeah, I'll, okay.
I'm not sure the mic is working properly.
Can you hear me?
So are you talking?
Can you hear me? Abdullah, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here now.
All right. So I've sent you the book to Google Chat. So if you look at the Google Chat, you will see I've attached the book there.
Yeah, I found it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Would you mind, like, if I have questions or things that I want to discuss with you, would you mind if I bring them up to you?
Yeah, you can go back to me.
Um, okay, is there anything else that you have for me, like feedback on my learning or my?
I think you're performing okay. I don't have much to say on that. Your submissions were okay, and the few areas where I had to make some corrections, I made some corrections. But all in all, I think your submissions have been okay so far.
Okay, so thank you.
All right, Abdullah, you have a good day.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bye.